And Andrew, for everyone watching, can you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yeah, so I've been in tech for over 15 years. Probably, I don't want to say how much over 15 years now.
You're like Anne.
Um,
Anne said the same thing about her experiences.
and I got my start at three-letter acronym government agencies doing black hat testing, so I can actually walk the walk if I have to. Um, and I'm very hands-on, so usually I've never completely left being a hands-on keyboard person. I think you need some of that to maintain integrity, but also keeps you grounded, and doesn't let you forget what everyone else is going through. But to answer your question a little better, yeah, so I moved to Seattle about 15 years ago, and I've done just about everything there is to do in technology. I was a developer. I was doing DevOps back when it was called release management. So there I've dated myself. I've done QA, I've done project management, program management, all the things. I did work at a consultancy for a number of years, as Anne might have mentioned. And that was really good because you get to work at a whole bunch of different places. I think of that, I've used the Led Zeppelin analogy before, where Led Zeppelin is really a bunch of session players. So they would play with different musicians all the time. And you really learn a lot there. And so when you're at a consultancy, you're working with a whole bunch of different companies all the time, and you learn an awful lot very quickly. And then after that, I left and I joined a startup, which had a very charismatic founder, but no IT or technology arm at all. So built that from scratch. We exited about 2 years later, a little less than 2 years later after I joined, a successful exit, and then decided to start my own company. And we got up to about 20 people, and then we also exited, bought by another larger fish in the ocean. So that was good. And then in the middle of all that, I also got a Master's of Science from London School of Economics. So busy, busy guy, I guess.
No, I thank you for that introduction. And I think it's really important for the community to point that out because I think it speaks to your character and how you're answering all these questions. The one quote that I remember that you sang very, very vividly when I asked you about startups, you said, I asked, oh gosh, the exits and what was that like? And you said most founders go into this thinking, I need to hit a grand slam. Right off the bat. You just go up, I want a grand slam. But are you asking yourself, are you even hitting singles? Are you getting on first base? And I
Right.
love that because it's about the fundamentals and the foundation. And if you're doing those things right, you're going to end up scoring and winning the game. And I think your history shows that where you've had successful exits across
Yeah.
the board. So I just wanted to point that out for everyone listening because it's a fun anecdote, I think, and a little into the window of Andrew and how he runs teams. Before we end, Anne, do you have anything you want to add or ask?
Hi, Andrew. I've got a couple of what ifs for you.
Sure.
When you're first starting to hire employees, what type of tools should I use? What's important in that first couple of employees that I'm hiring?
Boy, that's a big jump. So jumping from being two founders or three founders to actually hiring employees, that you kind of become a real company, as Pinocchio would say, a real boy at that point. You're no longer a solopreneur, if that's the term. And again, a lot of investors will see if you have employees, then you're actually a real company, a lot more sophisticated than just two folks with an idea. So what if I guess my advice there would be to look at the new generation of tools that are out there to help you do things, and not look at the legacy tools out there to do things. So to be concrete about it, if you're hiring folks, there's all kinds of state requirements. There's all kinds of licenses that you have to set up. There's taxes that have to be accounted for. all the payroll gets complicated, and there's tools out there. One would be Gusto, where it takes care of almost all of that for you, and it's web-based, and so you're not trying to run it on your laptop. And the advantage there is, at least in my experience, we could hire people from almost any state, and I won't lie and say it was frictionless, but it was much less difficult than if I were going to do it all on my own. Um, I know of a company that has just installed a legacy payroll system, and they had to hire someone just to try and figure out how to account for payroll, and particularly because this company was in several states and had people hired from different states. And so at the startup I was working at, payroll was maybe an hour or two every couple of weeks to calculate and run, make sure it's all correct, versus hiring someone to run payroll. So I would definitely look at the new generation of tools, and that goes for all the things, like 401k, for example, as well. There's your legacy market dominators, but there's also new online providers that are really easy to work with, easy to set up, and usually much less expensive.
Great.
Good answers.
Thanks. That'll help.
I have another question. I would love to know, since you are a founder and you actually have had several successful exits, I'm just interested to know, as a leader, what does it take to make that happen? Is it luck? I don't think that that's true. So what can you kind of talk through, like what maybe just bullet it, like, right, what kind of strengths do you need to have as a leader, or how would you invest in yourself as a founder so that you can build a successful startup?
Boy, that's a big question. Because
I think it's the one everyone wants to know, right? How do we be successful? How do we do this?
You mentioned leadership there. I'd say stick to the basics, and I know it's not a sexy answer, but you need to have a very good pitch deck. I know I'm answering the mechanicals, not the leadership question, but you need to have a very good pitch deck. The numbers in your pitch deck have to be true and accurate. You ideally have set up your startup to be investigated by external people from the beginning. That means having all of your documents in the right places and organized in the right way. One of the startups that did exit successfully, I think we went through over 24 due diligence sessions. And if we hadn't had everything organized and in the right place, those due diligence sessions would have probably collapsed the company, right? Because you start spending all your time getting them the right documents and getting the right numbers and all of that stuff, versus keeping your focus on the customers and working with the customers. So I think getting organized from a leadership point of view is really important, as banal as that sounds. And from a leadership point of view, that's a lot of philosophy there. I think you have to be open and transparent with investors. That's the big thing. And so they're a big customer of yours, is those investors. So you have to pay attention to them, but then you also have to pay attention to who your launch customers are still, and who that customer is after your launch customer, and you can't lose focus of either of those. And then the third leg of the stool is the folks you're working with. You have to keep them happy and let them know that you have to give enough transparency to let them know where they're at and where the company's at, so that they have faith but don't lose faith. And if you're completely nonsensical about it and tell them everything is great and it's always going to be great, they're not going to believe you there. And if you tell them, we're 3 days away from running out of cash, that's also not something to engender success. So you have to be transparent and honest with them, but know when to draw the line.
Let's see, one final what if. Oh, we were going to ask a lot of the different people that we're interviewing, and I think this might be a good question. So what are you currently reading?
What am I currently reading? I'm blanking on the title, but it's a economics book about how the world became rich. And it talks about the Industrial Revolution, but also predates that. And it tries to answer the question why England at the time that England hit. And so this is a good question. Now I'm revealing things. So one of my passions is around that time in history because and I'm going to get a little geeky. So there's this thing called there's a factor in economics called the Malthusian factor, which basically says there's throughout history population rises and falls with minor innovations. So you have a minor innovation, like maybe you know how to grow corn a little bit better, and so the population grows with that efficiency, but then soon you have overpopulation, and then there's a famine and a collapse because you have too many people. And so the world has gone through that cycle forever until roughly the Industrial Revolution. And after that, there's been this self-sustaining cycle of innovation, and it's that's really got us to where we are today. And why that happened and how we can optimize for that is something I'm very interested in. So there you go.
It's a good answer.
Cool. That's a good answer. Thanks.